Chris, welcome to the Guild of Dads podcast.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Likewise. I'm really pleased to speak to you today because it was a kind of chance meeting that I find that occurred in the sense of me finding out about you and what you do. And I was on a dads group and someone shared a LinkedIn post, and all of a sudden people were like, "This looks great. What this guy's doing." And my instant reaction when I saw it was, well, hang on a minute, he's trying to get the word out about what he's doing. I've got a podcast. I need to link up with him and let's see whether we can make some magic happen. So this is how it all came about in the end. So I want to thank you for agreeing to come on and have a chat with me today.
No, of course. Thank you very much for inviting us. It's been surreal, to be honest. We never expected to get the sort of publicity that we've got. Being live for 3 weeks has been a challenge, to say the least. But thank you very much for inviting us. I'm looking forward to sharing more about what we do.
Definitely. So where did your story start? Because I know you've been on this has all happened very, very quickly and very, very recently. Where did your sort of journey start in terms of starting off Miscarriage for Men and expanding it quickly into what it's become? What was your story, Chris?
So it started off back in February. Myself and my wife went through a miscarriage. My wife was 12 weeks pregnant at the time. What happened was she started getting some pains and common signs of miscarriage, and we kind of were a little bit aware of what was going on. Obviously, the first thing you do is go on Google, don't you, and you search for stuff as soon as stuff goes wrong like that. We were advised, the normal stuff, don't panic, it's regular, it's normal, don't worry about it. 2 days later, she was still the same. And it spiraled from there. We ended up going to the hospital. The thing for us was it was slightly different because at 9 weeks we had paid for a private scan, and at 9 weeks we seen the baby, we seen the heartbeat. We knew things were looking good at that time. And then to get to 2 days before your 12-week scan to find out that your baby's no longer got a heartbeat, then it's the worst news you can expect. But the thing for us was, I think the thing that made it more difficult was when you're going through this in the midst of a pandemic. It's a crazy time for it to happen. My wife obviously had to go to the hospital by herself, had to go into the hospital by herself. I wasn't allowed to attend. And it's a strange one because you had that have been a week later at the same place, I would have actually been allowed to attend the scan in the same room. But then to be told that you can't be there for an emergency scan is bonkers in my view. But I'm not taking anything away from the NHS. They're fantastic at what they've done. They deserve all applauded coming away for the way they've dealt with the pandemic and stuff. But it was just crazy, and when you get to that point where you've got to go through that yourself, and then she's got to come back and tell me what had happened. That's the worst thing in the world. And we got told then, not a case of don't worry about it, because we already knew what was happening. We'd been at the 9-week scan, we'd seen that. We're now at 12 weeks, and it's a different story. So we then had to wait 2 weeks, as you do. It's common law in the UK. And then 2 weeks, you don't know what to do with yourself. You end up in a bit of a black hole, trying to work out, what the hell's next. We didn't know. And for me, it was a case of trying to find some sort of common ground where I could deal with people who had gone through the same experience that I'd gone through. What should I expect next? And there's some great charities out there, the likes of For Louis, the Miscarriage Association, Tommy's. They're all fantastic charities in what they do, but I wasn't looking for that sort of professional help. I was looking for more for a peer-to-peer network where I could discuss with guys who'd actually been in this scenario and actually had that lived-in experience. Because it's all good and well going to professionals, and I've got no problems with that. But sometimes the professional help isn't what you need. You actually need that lived-in experience. And while I was searching for this, I couldn't find anything that was along these lines. And since I put the LinkedIn post on originally, a few different things have popped up here and there. But for some reason, when you search in Google, this kind of thing seems to be hidden. It seems to be, such a taboo around it that even Google doesn't want you to be able to find these kind of things. So I thought, right, okay, what can I do to change this, and how can I put my focus into something? And it really helped me from that point of view, because it gave me something else to focus on away from focusing on the grief. And I've never started a website. I load ships for a living. That's my day job. So a quick Google video, how do you build a website? Right, okay, go on to Wix, do this, and then the website was launched, and yeah, it's took off. And it's weird because I want to say that it's took off magnificently, but at the same time, it's not a website that you want to take off magnificently. I really wish that it was doing really badly, but yeah. That's the story of where we're at right now. So
yeah, it's an incredible journey, because the thing is sometimes you want stuff to take off, but not so fast that you can't keep up with how fast they're actually occurring, sort of thing. And it sounds like that you're almost like a victim of your own success, if that makes any sense at the moment.
Yeah,
so.
It was crazy. I mean, I put the LinkedIn post on the night that we went live, because I already had quite a few connections on LinkedIn anyway, and I thought, what it is, if it helps one other person who is going through the same thing that we're going through, then then so be it. And I put that post on. I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up with 30,000 likes and something like 1.3 million views within like 2 days. It was just, it was crazy. And now, fast forward 3 weeks, here we are, with 87,000 likes on the post and 3.1 million views of the actual post as well. It's incomprehensible really when you think about it, as to how many people it's reached in such a short amount of time. And of course, in terms of driving traffic into the website, that's generated nearly 100,000 views on the website and over 600 people joining up already to subscribe to it, to get feedback when people are posting on the forums and stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned something just then which I've kind of noticed as well, because I've not been through it with my wife, and so we've not ever experienced this, you see. But one thing I do know is how impacted Dad's experience has been during the pandemic in terms of being able to get involved, and like you said. But the other thing that resonated was, I have friends that I know whose wives have had miscarriages in the past, and I interviewed someone on the podcast a while back, and what's kind of strange is that no one really talks about it, and until it kind of comes up in conversation. So typically, you'll speak to some friends and they'll say, "Oh, it's the anniversary of da 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 da," and you'll be like, "Oh, so what's that? Who's the anniversary?" And then they start talking about it. And I was talking to someone else on the podcast, and he was referring to someone that had gone through it, and I think a friend's mum or whatever suddenly says, "Oh yeah, I had a miscarriage 30 years ago," sort of thing. And you're just like, hang on a minute, we didn't even know anything about this. And it's a really it's really peculiar how it's not something that's really talked about that much, particularly amongst men as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's the big thing. What you're saying there. I've had people who have contacted me over on the page on the website, who said they've bottled it up for 30 years. Who they've not spoken to anybody about it, and they've only just now turned around and said, well, actually, you know what it is? 30 years ago, me and my wife went through this, and then a similar story whereby the actual person who was telling me had just found out that week from his mother that she'd actually had a miscarriage when he was younger, and she hasn't told him, and he's 56 years old now, so it's kind of, you're right in terms of the stigma that it hasn't, that it hasn't been, that it isn't talked about. And I think one of the reasons why it's not talked about is because people don't know how to talk about it. I think that's the big thing. A lot of people, for instance, when I went back to work, people are going to come up to you and say, "Oh, look, I'm really sorry for your loss," and then that conversation then becomes awkward because there's nothing else to add to that. It's just a case of, "Oh yeah, thanks." And what I done was I didn't want people to come up and say that, so I told a few people who I'm close with at work, look, tell people just to let us be normal as I am. no, I appreciate the fact that they want to come up and say, I'm sorry for your loss, but, it while it does mean something, it doesn't at the same time, because there's no follow on from that. And I think people can be much better at this, but I think people need to start talking about it first in order to be able to have them difficult conversations. And I think that's why a lot of people tend to hold it back. Whereas on the other side of things, you've got the whole male stigma of it, whereby, we're the dominant ones. We have to be the strong person. We have to hold the family, and that's another reason why guys don't talk about it, because they think it makes them sound soft, or some sort of stigma attached to that, whereby they're not allowed to grieve because they're the male. They're not allowed to grieve. They have to be the strong one. And I think that's the other side of it as well. And that's what this platform was about, was trying to drag that out of people and actually have them talking about it, and let them know that, you can't talk openly about it. And you'll come to realize that there's a million other people out there who've gone through exactly the same kind of thing, but are probably in the same situation where they've bottled it up and wanted to speak to people, but just haven't had the right platform to do so.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, but also heartbreaking at the same time, in the sense that there are so many people that are clearly walking around with this, that have not spoken to anyone about it, or not vented at all, and you can see it on your forum. Some of the people, it's like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where they've just not been able to talk to anyone about it. And I think, as much as there are criticisms around kind of social media and the internet and stuff, this is one of the strengths where guys, I think, with what I do and what a lot of other people that are in the kind of dad and man space, we're beginning to realise that men have lost their tribes. And when men begin to find their tribes again, it enables us to kind of speak about stuff that we wouldn't ordinarily speak about if we were down the pub or whatever. It's a sort of non-confrontational way of talking about things, and people are able to share their experiences and share what's worked for them and what hasn't worked for them, and what is helping them and what is comforting them and what isn't. And the thing is you can only discuss this stuff with someone that's been through it and has kind of walked the walk and can talk the talk, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that was one of the challenges that I faced, because when I put the LinkedIn post on, like everything else on social media, you're always going to get comments that are going to come back saying, not sure this is the right thing to do. And there was one comment that resonated on LinkedIn that came through, which was a lady who commented on it saying, this shouldn't be done by you. It should be done by a professional therapist. You could make things worse, etc., etc. And I just replied back to her and I says, look, I 100% agree with you that it should have been set up by a professional therapist. However, there's people who've commented, as you can see on the comments, who've held this back for 30 years because they haven't had a forum like this. And the other response to that was that it's all good and well having professional therapists and counsellors, but if you go to a professional therapist or a counsellor who hasn't actually lived in it, they're basically doing the same thing that I'm doing, and they're looking at a book. And, Miscarriage for Men was never about being a professional platform. It was just about getting a group of guys together who've been through the same experiences, or are currently going through their experience, and having that lived in forum there where each other can learn from each other's experiences. And when I built the website originally, it was to help me. That's the only reason I done it. It wasn't about helping other people at the start of it. It was just about helping myself, because I needed something to put my focus into. And then I thought, you know what it is? If this helps one other person, then maybe that one other person can go and help one other person. And that was the focus behind it. And it was never about offering professional help or anything like that. It was just a case of, we're as sympathetic here. We've got the experience. We've been through it. Some of the guys on there have had 5-6 miscarriages. It's horrific. And these guys who've done this through 5-6 miscarriages have turned around and said, I've never once spoken to anybody about it. And you sit there and you think, how have you managed to do that and hold all this grief in for so long, and not actually be able to express that to anybody? And they're then saying, it can cause marital problems and all this different kind of stuff, which of course it will do, because that grief is going to build up, and they've never had a chance to express that grief. And I'm seeing more and more on that on the forums as it comes through. You tend to pick up quite quickly that there's a lot of stuff that resonated with each story, but it also resonates within yourself as well. And you can see, you can go, actually, do you know what it is? I actually went through that, and I can relate to that because I've been there and done it. And everybody who's came onto the forum or who's actually sent direct messages through the platform have all said the same thing, that, you know, majority of it is, thank you very much for starting this platform. I've been crying out for something this. But it's not just guys who've joined the platform, it's women as well, because they're looking for answers to help their partners. You know, they can see that their partners are going through this grief, but they don't know how to talk about it and don't know how to express it. Now, our platform was all about pointing them in the right direction, so we can give them the professional help through other channels. And since I put the post out on social media, the amount of therapists and counsellors who've came out and said, look, I'll offer me time to the guys, not a problem, you know, free of charge, don't want anything for it. I'll do live seminars through Zoom, you know, just let me know what you want me to do. And, you know, already that collection of people is coming there. And I think, you know, the people who put the bad comments on are the ones who are quick to judge without actually knowing the premise behind what you were trying to do. And, you know, it's just a case of brushing it off. But, you know, a softer version of myself might have said, actually, do you know what it is? Let's close the whole thing down and forget it, you know, which of course is not what I wanted. So,
yeah, it's interesting. There was a post I saw from somebody on my social media this week, and this is kind of digressing a bit, but he's a guy that does a massive amount of charity work, and he's paddled around the UK, and he had to stop doing what he was doing because of COVID when he was on the tip of Scotland, so sort of 2/3 of the way round, and people there've been a few articles in the media criticising him. Okay, and it's interesting how people that are not going to do anything about these things are the first ones to criticise. But in actual fact, it takes a lot of balls to actually say, no, actually, I am actually going to do something about it. And it's very easy for people to stand by in the wings and say, oh, yeah, I'm going to criticise you because you're not a professional therapist, or you're not this, or you're not that. Well, in actual fact, Chris is doing a lot more than what anyone else is doing right now. And he's actually putting his money where his mouth is and actually doing it rather than just talking about doing it. So, you know, I've got to take my hat off to you over that, because not only are you doing it, but you're also doing it in a period of time, arguably, where you were also going through the grief and trauma of having it happened literally weeks ago. So, you know, I just don't get that mentality, to be honest with you. And I think you're right, just to completely ignore it and just carry on and do what you're doing, sort of thing, which is great. And I think the difficulty, I think, is with this situation is that I think grief and bereavement is difficult, I think, in any scenario, but I think that the reason I think it's possibly stigmatized even more so is that, like, when I've experienced grief, people will often not know what to say to you. Like you said, they will walk on the other side of the road, or they might avoid you for a bit or whatever. But the fact that it's to do with an unborn child adds an extra dimension to that, I think, because it's that kind of, it's such a difficult thing to really get your head around, or put yourself in someone's position who's been through that, I think.
Yeah, it is. Oh, absolutely, it is. And, you know, and I fully agree that it's difficult. And that was one of the reasons why with the website I allowed it to set it up so that they could join anonymously as well. Because for me, people who can post anonymously, they become somebody else. And just for that, you know, that brief 5 minutes where they're typing their story up, they become the third person, and they type it up in the words that they want to say, but actually can't express it from the mouth. And I think that was one of the big things, because, you know, there's a couple of posts on there that you'll see where the guys have wrote on and they've said, I never ever thought I would say this, but I've actually, you know, and then the story comes out, and the next thing you know, that story is, you know, 5-6 pages long with the full story of what they've gone through. And then they get to the end of it and they're like, thank you so much for allowing, it's lifted so much off my shoulders. We haven't actually done anything. They've done everything themselves, you know, but just the fact that they've been able to post it anonymously and nobody knows who they are. I can see their email address and stuff, but in the post itself, nobody can see who they are. So it is a case of the fact that they become somebody else, and they don't feel that stigma there because nobody can actually see who they are. And, you know, that was the way that we wanted to continue. We will continue that way as well. Like I said earlier, we are the process of looking at developing the website further, because I started off with a basic Wix platform, basically. Never done it before. Like I say, I load ships for a living, so it's not a case of building websites and stuff like that. But what's there right now is all right. But we've seen that it's a platform that's needed. We know that. We've seen that within 3 weeks, the amount of feedback we've had and the amount of messages and stuff that we've had within them 3 weeks. So we now need to take that to the next step.
One of the things that I'd uncovered when I was researching this whole topic, miscarriage is generally in the first sort of 24-ish weeks, isn't it? So it's the first 6 months of pregnancy. And you mentioned earlier on in our conversation about the fact that you found out and then you had to kind of wait 2 weeks. Until I'd spoken to you this evening, I didn't even realise. In my mind, I thought that once you found out that you'd miscarried, then there was a procedure thereafter. I didn't realise that there was a stopgap of 2 weeks between finding out and actually the procedure taking place. That's got to be a difficult period to try and get through, because for obvious reasons, mum knows that the pregnancy is over, you know that the pregnancy is over, but you've not got that, I don't know whether closure is the right word, because it's not the right word. You've not got that saying goodbye bit, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And I think that was the challenge for us was, like I say, because we'd had the private scan first, and then getting to the 12-week mark and them saying, we can't find a heartbeat, and then saying, but it could be that your baby's measuring smaller, so we need to leave it that 2 weeks just to make sure that but the fact that we'd already seen the baby with the heartbeat, that was the difficult part. And I think you're completely right. The emotion process for me obviously was completely different to what it is for my wife, because it's my wife who's going through it. She's the one carrying the baby. So that emotional state. There's two separate entities there. And my big thing was, as I said in the post, in the LinkedIn post and stuff like that, the focus should be 100% on the woman. I fully appreciate that, and I fully agree with that 100%. But I think, because the reason this has been overlooked so much is because that's what we do. We automatically go into that robot state, and we become, the dominant male, and we want to make sure that the wife's all right, and and I went into that state. I'm asking my wife every 2 seconds, are you okay? Do you want anything? Do you need this? Do you want that? And I probably became overbearing at that point, because it's a case of that she needs to process her own emotions at the same time, and I'm constantly checking in, and that was when I then was making sure she was all right. And then once she was asleep, then I'm going online to try and find these answers that I'm looking for. So it was kind of processing it in two separate stages for me. Whereas, like you say, for my wife, it was just a case of that we now know for 2 weeks that we've got this, emotional state that we're going to have to go through. And then in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have to go through it all again, because we have to repeat the process as such. And that there is no words to put into that. I think the later you get on in pregnancy, it changes slightly. So I think the 2 weeks part will go away, because once you start getting to 16 weeks plus, then it's still, and it's baffling that, at 16 weeks, you've got pretty much a fully formed baby at 16 weeks, that you still class that as a miscarriage, because it's crazy. But there's no words to really describe it, to be honest, because that 2 weeks is just a blur. For me, it was a case of I couldn't concentrate on things, and I think that's when you kind of know that you're slipping into that black hole kind of space, where you think, right, I need to do something here, because this could be a slippery road here, and I need to pull myself out of it. And that was my intentions around building the website was. Yeah. I can put my thoughts into that, and my thought process was completely on that. And what I done was I took my laptop, I went and sat in a separate room from my wife, put my head down, and I just started working on it. And I kept on saying to my wife, "Oh, I'm doing something, but I don't want to show you until it's till it's finished," because I didn't know how she was going to react, and I didn't know what kind of feedback I was going to get from it. And then I done it, and I finished the website, and before I was about to publish it, I went, right, there you go, there's my laptop, this is what I've been working on for the last 10 days. and she loved the website. She thought it was a great idea. So it was nice to get that. And the good thing about it is that my wife's in a position now where she's asking, how can I help with the website? Is there anything I can do? Not in terms of answering questions from people and, replying on the forum and stuff, but certainly things like this where I'm being invited to join podcasts and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I've also got my 12-year-old daughter involved as well. So she's busy doing diary entries for us and stuff like that at the moment. So it's a bit of a family project at the moment.
It's a family affair, as they say.
Yeah, so. Definitely. And that was one of the other hard things as well, is when you try to explain to a 12-year-old that their new baby brother or sister will not be joining them this year. That was a difficult thing to process as well. But she's 12. She's going to be 13 in October, and she's in high school, so she understands, and she took it on board quite well. And then I says to her, look, do you want to get involved with the website? Earn yourself a little bit extra pocket money, and you can help out doing diary entries and stuff. And eventually, she was like, yeah, how much are you going to pay us? That was the quick question that I got back. So. But it's nice to get her involved in it as well, because then not only does it show her a little bit of business admin side of stuff, but also it's quite a nice way, because this is our little legacy now, basically, from what's formed from what has happened. So
well, the thing is, it's putting your energy in something positive from something that's happened, which has been a negative experience, and I think that one of the things that resonates and comes through time and time again, and I've covered this in the past with guys who have suffered from postnatal depression, which is a very recent thing, coming off the back of particularly when their wives have had traumatic births. And there is this kind of depersonalization that happens when dad is kind of dealing with trauma. But also I think what occurs is that I think us guys have an innate desire to want to fix things and to put things right when they go wrong. And I think what is mind-blowing for any man or for any dad is when something happens, you've got this innate drive to protect and provide for your family. But when you can't protect them, and when you can't fix stuff or put stuff right, or you can't rectify things, I think it's kind of very emasculating as a guy, because you want to be able to do that. You want to be able to fulfill that role. And I think that rips guys up inside when you can't do that, and when you can't take pain away, and you can't make things right. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. That was the big thing for me. Like you say, because you go into this dominant male mindset, like you say, you want to be able to repair something, and when something's out of your reach and you physically can't do anything, you feel useless. That's what I felt like. I felt useless, because it was a case of this was happening, and I can see my wife breaking her heart in front of us, and there's nothing you can do to make that situation better. That's the big thing, and it's just a case of obviously being there for them, and being there to comfort them as much as you can, because like you say, you're in a no-win situation, basically, because there is physically nothing you can do to fix that scenario. And like you said earlier on, it is a case that we do go into that mindset that you protect the family, don't you? You build that bubble around it, and all of a sudden you can feel that bubble getting away from you, because there is nothing you can do.
When in terms of your other children, and you mentioned obviously your 12-year-old, and getting involved with the website and getting her on board with being part of the team and stuff and that, how does it begin to kind of impact the rest of the family in terms of brothers and sisters, and obviously you've got mum, but also kind of the wider family in terms of kind of other siblings, maybe even grandparents and stuff? What sort of ripple effect does it have, from speaking to some of the other guys that have been in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge ripple effect that comes from it, because as soon as you make that first announcement that you're pregnant and you're expecting baby, that is it. That is your day one. Granted, you're probably 8-9 weeks down the line, but that's your real day one, and that's the that's the point where everybody gets excited. I mean, for me, my wife, it was we like fancy holidays. We like to go, far afield and stuff like that. And it was, it was never a case that we were that children were on the cards. We'd never planned that. And then this happened, and straight away you kind of, we looked at each other and kind of laughed and just went, what do we do now? Because, this, it wasn't a planned scenario. And, we're planning, next year will be our 10-year wedding anniversary, and we're planning, a big trip away. We want to do Thailand or somewhere like that. And of course, obviously, that would have completely changed, the scenario. So we sat there and looked at each other and went, what do we do now? Do we need to move house? Do we need a bigger car? All these things start going through it. And then it's a case of, right, okay, at what point do we then tell the family, that we're expecting? And, it would have been mine and my wife's first child. My daughter's from a previous relationship. So it was an exciting time. So of course, we were 7 weeks in, and we went, right, look, let's tell close family. We'll tell my mum and my stepdad, and we'll tell your mum and dad, and then we'll just go from there. And so we told them, and we said, look, we're going for a private scan in 2 weeks' time. Then we'll see how things are. By 9 weeks, things are starting to look a little bit different. We can see there's a heartbeat and stuff like that. And then we can maybe, extend that bubble a little bit to, close friends. And you get, and that excitement comes. And of course, obviously, we've done all that, and you start planning. And then, of course, then this happens, and then you have to drop that bombshell. And I think that's one of the hardest things, is when you then have to, you've got all that excitement of telling people that you're pregnant, and then you've got the heartache of then having to tell people, well, actually, it's not going to happen. And that's a really, really difficult thing, because, like you say, because there's so much stigma around a miscarriage, and the loss of a child, the loss of a pregnancy, it's really difficult to tell people. So what I suggested was that we just found a nice picture, and we just put it on both our Facebooks. We told our close family first that it had happened. And, obviously they're visibly upset, would-be grandmas and granddads, are no longer going to be. And then I just said, look, why don't we find a nice picture, and we'll just put it on with Facebook with a message saying, look, we were pregnant, but unfortunately, we've miscarried, and this is what happened. So we put that on, on the feed, and we've got a fantastic support network. We've got some very, very close friends. My two best friends are there at my beck and call. If I rang them 2 o'clock in the morning, they'd pick the phone up. It's not a problem. But not everybody's got that, and I think that's one of the other issues that we face, is the fact that, going back to the whole stigma, and the reasons why people don't talk about it is because, not everybody's got that, and not everybody's got that sort of relationship where they can openly say, look, guys, it is, me and my wife's had a miscarriage. And then you get that awkward silence, and it's like, oh, well, I'm sorry for your loss. And then nobody knows what to say, so you kind of quickly move on, and then nothing else is said about it. But it does affect, other members of family 100%, because, some of the guys who've reached out on the platforms, they're saying, well, what about grandparents and all this type of stuff? And I said, miscarriage for men, it's non-descriptive. It doesn't have to just be, fathers. It can be, brothers. It can be anything, and hence the reason why I've not limited the only guys being able to join the website, because, there is women who are coming on there who are looking for advice to help their partners through this as well. And that was the thing. And for me, male, female, same-sex marriages, it doesn't make a difference for me. Anybody can join the website. I'm really not bothered. I just want to be there to help people. That's all I want, and if I can help one other person and they can help one other person, that'll make the world a better place moving forward. That's what I want. So
yeah. And the thing is as well, is that I think that, to speak to that point you just made, the other thing is people grieve in different paces as well. There is, some people talk about the grief cycle being different stages and stuff, but some people grieve in a different way so one spouse might grieve in a different way to their husband or wife, and they might grieve in a different pace as well. So it may well be that one is kind of a lot more further progressed in a shorter space of time, whereas the other one's still struggling sometime after. So you've got these different paces at which people grieve as well to sort of unpackage. And I think that is why what you're doing is kind of quite strong, and you've got I would imagine as well in certain cultures, I don't know how many different people you'll have coming worldwide onto your website, but you've also probably got cultural differences as well occurring in different countries in terms of, you know, how people are able to speak about it in different cultures and religions, and how it's looked at, and also apart from anything else, people are the natural thing to think is there something wrong with me, or is this, or, and this goes for husband and wife, mum and dad, isn't it? You know, what have I done? Although we know instinctively that's just silly, that's got to be a thing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely it is, and you see that about people who are coming on the page, you know, who are writing stuff on there, and they're saying, you know, the first instinct is the mother thinks, oh my God, what have I done wrong? You know, have I eaten something wrong? You know, have I done this? Have I done that? You know, and yeah, it's never about that. You know, it's but that's the first instinct. Straight away they start blaming themselves, and like you say, that goes for both. You know, both male and female. They both start thinking the same thing, and it's crazy because some of the comments that I see on there as well from, you know, guys who've opened up and spoke to people, and, you know, goes back to saying what we were saying before in terms of people not knowing what to say. You know, I had one guy who contacted me, him and his partner, they lost their baby at 6 weeks. And one of their closest friends turned around and went, yeah, but it's not really a baby by then anyway, is it? And it's like, oh, you know, come on. You know, whether it's day one or you're in week 30, it doesn't make a difference. You know, the parents to be are excited, they're looking forward to it, you know, and I think that's one of the other things that needs to be looked at in terms of how people can progress forward with speech when they're talking to people around this is, you know, oh, well, you can always try again, at least you can get pregnant, you know, all this type of stuff. It's, you know, they probably mean it in the best way, but when, you know, when people are grieving, that's, you know, it's not the sort of thing that they want to hear.
Yeah, and the thing is as well is I think that it depends on where you fall, also where you fall on that kind of whole. There's so many different views about post-conception and when you know, when they have awareness and when they're a little human being and all these kind of different things. But that kind of detracts from the fact that as soon as you find out, you're visualizing a life in your head that's going to be occurring in the future. And any dad knows this, that you go to bed, you know, particularly in those first few weeks, you go to bed and all you can think about, you're consumed by the fact that you're going to have another little life coming into this world, and you're thinking about pushchairs, like you say, you're thinking about cars, you're thinking about whether your house is going to be big enough, you're thinking about the first time you take them to the swimming pool. There's all these, you're visualizing the life that you're going to have with them. So when this happens, you're not just grieving the loss, but also you're grieving the life that you had planned for in your head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a case, like you say, you know, straight away from day one of them, you know, them lines appearing on a pregnancy test, that's it. You know, your mind, like you say, your mind goes into overdrive, you know, because all of them, that thought process, you know, once you've actually gone through it, because like I say, we done ours, and me and my wife kind of looked at each other and just burst out laughing, and just like, okay, what do we do now, you know? But you are, because straight away then you know, you go into that mindset of, right, okay, what do we need to do now? You know, what do we need to buy? You know, writing lists and all this kind of stuff, and you're thinking, yeah, okay, you know, do you have to take a second mortgage out on this to, you know, to continue and things like that? And it's just, yeah, it is, and like you say, because of the way that it's been thought of in years gone by, nobody ever does training on this kind of stuff. One of the good things that has come out of this is I've had quite a few like HR directors and stuff contact us who said, you know what it is, we're now going to implement miscarriage actually into our HR manuals, and we're going to look at training processes for managers in order for them to be able to converse with the staff, and all this kind of stuff, you know, and that's phenomenal, you know, for something like that to come out of something that we started so small, you know, and these are big companies who are coming out and say that. And then the recent news that just came out from New Zealand saying that they're now going to do parental rights for miscarriage now, whereby they will be given paid leave to be able to grieve rather than actually having to go into work and ask for time off. One good thing I will say about my employers is they were fantastic. I rang my boss and said, look, this is what's happening. I need some time off. And he went, yeah, no problem at all. Just let us know when you'll be back. And that was really good, because some of the horror stories that I've heard from people who've wrote into the page, it's disgusting, really. But the fact that there's only 2 countries in the world who currently offer, a miscarriage package when you need to have time off work is disgusting, really. It should be standard law across all countries, because and that should go for both the mother and the father. Because New Zealand are leading the way with this at the moment, especially with their announcement last week. And you'll see that it's been plastered everywhere, on every social media page that you go on, all over LinkedIn. The amount of shares that this has got from Ginny Anderson's announcement is huge, and hopefully other countries will soon follow suit with that. So
yeah, sounds like there's work to do on that, but I think it's the same as the paternity leave, isn't it? That's taken a while for that kind of slow ebb to kind of kick in, to the point that we're at now, where paternity leave is a lot better for guys than what it was before, and it was literally like, oh, you got a week off and that's it, and then you're back to work, sort of thing. So I think these things are gradually beginning to kind of sort of level up, but again, it's again these societal attitudes we took to your point about the guy that said, oh, don't worry, you can have another baby, sort of thing. It's breaking down those kind of societal attitudes where people would just think, it's something that you're just gonna get over just like that, sort of thing. In terms of the kind of some of the stories that I've actually seen on your website, one of the things that kind of I found most shocking is where couples have had this on a kind of multiple miscarriages, one after the other, sort of thing, and the real impact and effect that has on a relationship. What I don't even, words almost escape me on it, because I just can't imagine being in that situation. But how do you get through something like that, Chris? It's just I can't put it into words.
No, it is really, it's a really difficult scenario to be put in. I mean, me and my wife, we've had one miscarriage. I think the hardest part for that would be is you kind of go into a different mindset, because I know for a fact that if and when my wife falls pregnant again, it's probably going to be difficult to enjoy the pregnancy, because you're going to be every single, oh God, I've hurt me back, or everything like that. You're going to be of that mindset that something's going wrong, and I think that's where the relationship pressures will come, because it is going to be one of them. I mean, like you say, you've seen some of the guys on there who says, we've had five miscarriages time and time again, and this has happened, and then eventually on the 6th try, they've actually managed to have a rainbow baby, and it's I'm the same as you in that respect, in terms of I can't imagine what that must be like. For me, I think it would be difficult, to continue down that route and to continue trying again if I was going to face that inevitable heartbreak every single time. Because I think you can only put so much pressure on yourself, and I've full respect to them when they're putting these stories on, in terms of how many times they've gone through it, and it's lovely to hear that at the end of all the traumatic experiences that they've been through, they've eventually got the child that they've so desperately craved. But it's it must be so difficult to be put in that position. Because at some point you have to make the decision, do we continue doing this? I think that's the hard question. And I think, that kind of puts a different spin on things, because when you then have one partner who, yes, I do want to continue, and you have one partner who then says, yeah, but I don't, because, I've suffered this inevitable heartbreak now 4 times over, and I don't think I've got any more to give to be able to do that. That's where you then end up in the position where you then have problems with, marital status and stuff like that, because that person's so desperately craving craving the baby that they want, whereas one person is at the other side saying, well, actually, you know, I don't think we can try anymore because I just can't physically take the heartbreak anymore. And again, you know, these are guys who, you know, they've gone through it 5-6 times, but they've bottled this up for 35, 40 years and not actually told anybody. You know, and I mean, that's shocking, you know, the fact that they've had to do that. You know, we know we're now here in 2021 and we don't have the support out there that we need right now. You know, so you can only imagine what it must have been like back in the late 80s and the early 90s. You know, these guys are having to go through this with nothing. You know, we don't have internet and stuff like that to be able to go and search this kind of stuff up. And it was probably just a case that, you know, you're a man, get on with it, you know, and he'll go and meet the guys down a pub for a beer or whatever. And I done an interview with the Telegraph 2 weeks ago, and I was talking about this, and I'd says, you know, the lady who was interviewing me, it says, you know, you're from from Newcastle, you're from the northeast, you know, minor territory, and they've got, you know, all this, you know, we are real men kind of stigma attached, you know. And I says, you know, and it's bizarre because, you know, I was brought up by my stepdad, and I lived with my granddad for a little while, and you know, I tried to think back, and I don't think I ever seen them cry ever. You know, and I seen my granddad cry maybe once at me, you know, my nana's funeral, and that was probably the only time in, you know, 60 odd years that I ever seen him cry. And you know, and it's amazing when you think back that these sort of people were brought up with that mentality, and they've just, you know, had to get on with it basically. And now we've got the resource to be able to do this, you know, and build a platform like we have. To be able to have people to express their feelings. Now you see the sort of stuff that's coming out in terms of, oh, you know, me and my family, we've been through 6 miscarriages, and you're just like, what? It's mind blowing.
Yeah, and I think, and you, like you say, it's the impact it has on the relationship as well, because fundamentally, when mum and dad first get together, whether you're married or not, it's about your relationship, and then your kids are like an extension of that kind of relationship. But I think the difficulty is when your kids become your kids, or your desire to have kids almost overshadows the actual relationship that you've got with each other, and to the point that in actual fact your own relationship kind of gets almost forgotten in this desire to have children, which is understandable. It's absolutely understandable, but that obviously can, over time, that can have an effect on people, and also, like you say, if you've not ever spoken to anyone about it, and this goes for men and women, then that is going to have an effect on your relationship, because there is that trauma sitting there, which has kind of never been resolved. And we know that unresolved trauma can really have a negative effect in terms of kind of self-medication, coping strategies, drinking too much, smoking too much, eating too much, and plus other stuff worse than that. So there is a knock-on effect of not dealing with stuff that needs to be dealt with in terms of men's mental health and women's mental health.
Absolutely. And it is a case that you end up in this vicious circle, because you're trying to please yourself and your partner with doing, the idea of, having a family and this kind of stuff. But the longer that doesn't happen, or the more pressures you have on that in terms of miscarriage and stuff like that, that's where you then end up in this cycle where right, okay, I've tried 3 times now and, it hasn't happened. And you start to get that, that little bit of clouded judgment, and your anxiety starts coming out, and then, and that further adds to more problems. And that's where, people are, they're scared to talk about it. And, that's the big thing. And, we've seen it, with numerous celebrities over the last couple of years, in terms of who've taken their life because of mental health. And, and it's sad when you think, we can send, rocket ships up to the moon with crystal clear pictures, yet we kind of have people sitting around a table actually talking about the feelings and getting off their chest what they actually need. And that's the frightening thing. And it all comes back to having that whole stigma, about being able to talk about things. For me, I'm quite happy to talk about things. I'm quite an open guy, and but again, there's a lot of people who aren't in my situation, who are, very reserved, very introvert, who wouldn't be comfortable sharing them feelings. And that was the whole point, like I said before, about the, being able to be anonymous when you're in the, in the forum. And that will be likewise as well, because, we've got some big plans moving forward in terms of what we want to do. We want to have, some, community Zoom meetings in terms of being able to come onto the platform and, have a counsellor speak and talk about, grief therapy and all this type of stuff. And they will be able to do that anonymously, so they can join the chat room for the Zoom conference, but they'll be able to do it anonymously, so it won't show their name, and they don't have to talk if they don't want to. They can sit there and they can just listen. They don't have to get involved. Of course, it'd be lovely if they do get involved, but if they don't want to get involved and they just want to hear and listen to other people's stories about that, then then so be it. And that's probably the next step for us, is being able to put some of these support meetings together. And then, post COVID, let's see what happens, because, I'd love to be able to get more people involved. I've got a lot of people who do want to get involved in the project. And if we can make this, countrywide and have a few different outreaches here, there and everywhere, then, so be it. It'll be a fantastic thing to do. So.
Yeah, it's definitely, so there is a power in it. And I think the thing is I always talk about, in terms of guys, I find it with some of the people that follow Guild of Dads as well. Often people will be watching what you're doing, even if they're not getting involved, even if they're not commenting or whatever. And then all of a sudden, something you'll say, someone will just say, "Oh, that really resonates with me, what you're saying," and I can totally relate to what you're saying. And it's really funny with guys. This is a serious subject, but with guys, quite often what you'll find is that it's kind of like, when you go to a family disco and everyone's the girls are dancing around their handbag first off, sort of thing, and then the guys are standing at the bar and they're having a few beers and whatever. And they're like, I'm not going to dance. And I've talked about this before. Yeah. and then after a certain time at night, they've got their ties around their head, sort of thing, and jackets off, break dancing on the middle of the dance floor. But it takes a little bit of time for them to get their confidence up, to just let loose. And I think that's a perfect analogy for how guys look at expressing themselves and talking about difficult subjects, and that they'll often sit in the sidelines for a little while and whatever, and then it'll just reach a point where, right, I'm going to get stuck in now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I fully agree with that, and it's a great analogy, that one as well, because you're right. It is just about drawing that little bit out of them, a little bit at a time, and then all of a sudden, bam, you'll get the whole story, and then they'll go, wow, do you know what it is? You haven't actually done anything, but I actually feel better from the fact that I've actually just been able to get that off my chest and be able to say what I've been wanting to say for 20 years. And yeah, when I see that on the forum and I see people commenting on it, there's two different feelings there for us. For one of them, it's heartbreak, because I see guys who are going through 3-4 miscarriages and that type of stuff, and that's heartbreaking to hear that. But on the other side, there's a little bit of pride there as well, because I'm so grateful that they've actually broken that stigma and actually then turned around and said, actually, I'm going to share my story with you. And then all of a sudden, you've got a post that is now 30 paragraphs long, and you sit there and you read through the whole lot, and you're just like, wow, like, what a roller coaster of emotions you must have been through to get that. And I always start the replies off with the same thing, and the first thing for me is always about expressing condolences to the person writing it, because it might not be what they want to hear, but at the same time, it is a genuine condolences from me, because I've been there and I've been through it, and when you read the stories, the amount of pressure that they must have been under just writing the story that they've put down, because you want to talk about it, and then you start writing about it, and as you start writing about it, all them thoughts start coming back, and you're kind of reliving your story back over again as you're writing it. And and the guys have said that at the same time, where they've said, what I've put down on paper is minute by minute basically what I've been through, and I've just relived it all over in my head, but it's lifted that cloud off us, because I've been wanting to say it for so long, but I didn't know who to say it to. And like I said before, we might not be the right people to say it to, but we've been through it, and we've got so many different people on the platform now who have been through it, and every story starts the same way, with the issues that they've had, and it all ultimately ends in the same sadness as well, but we've all been through a similar scenario, and it might be that there's just that one question that's popped into the air at the end. Guys, what would you do? And that's not them asking for professional advice. That's asking advice from somebody who's lived in it. What would you do? And it's a case of somebody might have already been through that, so they can turn around and say, well, actually, do you know what I've done? I put my headphones in, I went out for a run, and then I came back and I sat down with my wife and I went, this is what I'm feeling at the moment. And certain little things like that will help. And as I've said numerous times before, and on numerous posts that I've commented on and stuff like that, not everybody wants professional help. I certainly didn't want professional help. I wanted to be able to talk to a group of guys who'd been in the same scenario as I had. Like I say, I've got a great support network. I could have contacted my friends, but I didn't feel like I wanted to burden them with it. What I wanted to do was I wanted to talk to guys, because these guys who I wanted to speak to have been through it, and they'll be the ones to point me in the right direction. And even if that's just pointing me to a website to say, oh, well, I found this really helpful, then that for me would be a great thing. And that's why on the website, I've shared some fantastic links to, For Louis, Tommy's, Miscarriage Association and stuff like that. And the big thing for me was, I'm keen to collaborate with so many different people, because for me, you can never get enough help. It doesn't, there could be a million Facebook groups the same as mine, and everybody will be doing something different. And all it takes is that one share. And if we can share each other's groups, somebody who's going through a miscarriage at the moment might also need help for anxiety, or for stress, or anything, and that's not what our area is about. But I know a group who do help you in that, so then you point them in that direction, and that's the kind of thing that I wanted. So
well, it's equipping guys with the school with the tools and the tools in the information, and I think that when you can say, oh, actually, this is where you go for this piece of information, this might help you. That's kind of, I think there's a power in that. And we mentioned tribes at the beginning. Hundreds of years ago, guys would have sat down around a campfire, and you were only as strong as the weakest member of your tribe. So it was within your interest, and within everyone's interest, to share information, share what was working. And thousands of years ago, that may have been basic information about how to skin an animal or catch an animal. But it's exactly the same principle of sharing what you know in order to help someone else, and then they share that information with someone else in order to help someone else. And again, it's this ripple effect we talked about, that once you begin to this information begins to percolate through, all of a sudden it spreads far and wide, and all of a sudden a guy who had no idea how to deal with it, he has got a bit more information which helps him a little bit, and then he finds what works and what doesn't work and stuff. And this is what it's kind of all about. And I think the thing is if you're I don't think any guys like to see another. I think probably the most painful thing for a man, next to seeing his family in pain, is seeing another guy in pain. And and having, but also the most kind of the thing that exhibits the most humility is the ability to actually say, I can help that guy by giving him some information about what I know that is going to get him out of this funk just a little bit, and then all of a sudden it's just a very powerful thing, really.
Yeah, totally agree.
Chris, it's been a fascinating conversation, finding out about your story and finding out about the journey that you've been on, and the work that and how quick it's come about, and how quickly you're having an impact is just incredible. And so, I have to take my hat off to you, sir, and doing it off the back of something that's happened literally weeks ago is even more kind of impressive. So you are definitely a man that is making a positive impact on the world by far.
Thank you, appreciate that.
What is the best way for people to find out about what you're doing and link up with you on social media or your website or whatever? The floor is now open to you, sir, to plug what you're doing as much as you want.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate those kind words. Anyway, yeah. I mean, we've got some big plans. I keep referring to we, but it's still just me at the moment. I'm still just a one man band at the minute. But like I said before, I've got some big contacts. I've got some big calls this week in terms of getting people involved. And we've got some big ideas moving forward. We want to do some online community outreach. We want to do some, post COVID, we want to go out and do some community outreaches. And, we're happy to do talks with companies and stuff like that in terms of, like I say, it's a common misconception that miscarriage is overlooked in the workplace. Nobody knows how to talk about it. We're not, as I say, keep saying we're not professionals, but you can come to our website, miscarriageformen.com. We've got the forum on there where you can leave your story. We have a live chat function there as well, which comes direct to myself. So, if you need some advice, you can reach out on the live chat. There's some big stuff going to happen with that because I have people in 6 different countries who want to get involved. The way that it works is that moving forward, that should become a 24-hour platform. So if you need some urgent advice or you just want a shoulder to cry on, you'll be able to reach us 24 hours a day going forward. That should be ready in the next couple of weeks. And we're busy redeveloping the website to make it a little bit more smoother, a little bit more neater. And you can find us over on Instagram and also on Twitter. At Instagram, it's Miscarriage for Men. On Twitter, it's Miscarriage for Men, but the 4 is a number 4 because it wouldn't accept FOR. So, but we're live on all the platforms, and we have a private group now on Facebook as well, which is Miscarriage for Men. You can find us over there. You'll be able to see the little branded label, so you can see that, and and then we'll take it from there. All the updates that we're doing and the new stuff that's due to come will be posted on the social media platforms as well. But yeah, watch this space. We've got some exciting stuff, and I keep saying it. I keep saying the same thing. I really hope that nobody has to use our website, but if you do, then we're there for you.
All right, excellent. I'm going to ask you one last question, Chris, and I don't prime any of my guests for this. What is it in life that gives you meaning?
For me, it's family. That's the key thing. It's a funny thing because everybody uses the same paraphrase. You work to live. That's what you work for. For me, one big thing that I've learned this year was the lockdowns. When the first lockdown came, I couldn't load ships, so I was placed on furlough. So I had 14 weeks at home, and during that time, my daughter was off school. Normally, my daughter only comes to my house on a weekend, but during that time, I had her for 7 whole weeks, so it was brilliant. And that's time I'll never get again. That for me was phenomenal, and it really opened my eyes to things, to the time that I should spend with my family. That was the big thing for me, and that has to be the key motivator, because at the end of the day, if my family are happy, I'm a happy guy. That's that's it for me. So
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, sir. And like I say, whatever we can do to support what you're doing and get the word out, I'm more than happy to do so and collaborate with you, because I think what you're doing is fantastic, and you deserve every success in what you're doing, because it has the potential to impact so many lives, both directly and indirectly. So I appreciate the work you're doing, Chris. And with that in mind, thank you very much for coming on, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been all mine. I'm very much looking forward to the Gilded Dads working with you going forward. Definitely something that I'm more than happy to do. So yeah, let's do it.
All right, excellent. Mine, there you go, Chris.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Take care, man.